Sandra, I've been thinking about something since our conversation with Ankara Rose in episode 47. We spent nearly an hour talking about authenticity, about being ourselves, about safety. And I keep wondering what happens after you've done all that work. Because eventually you have to let somebody, or maybe lots of somebodies, see you. And I wonder if that's the part that scares women the most.
Oh my gosh. I think that's exactly what's happening.
Mm.
And I've really been sitting with this for the last 8 weeks in particular and doing a lot of writing about it. Because when we say visibility, most people automatically think about networking or LinkedIn or even public speaking. But I'm not sure that that's where the conversation starts. I think it starts earlier than that. I think it starts with one question. And the question was one that we talked quite a bit about with Ankara as well. And that is, it safe to be seen? And where am I safe to be seen? How am I safe to be seen? If this sounds like a question you ask yourself, then we're going to invite you to subscribe and follow because we have weekly conversations about being ourselves in all parts of our lives, including the workplace, as leaders in our families, and supporting our community. And we'd love to have you join us.
Thank you for extending that invitation to our listeners,
Mm.
Sandra. This conversation for me really started when you shared that story about you and your daughter
Mm.
being silly together. And that's something that you've had ever since you had her, this level of comfort together and knowing that you're truly safe when you're together. And I fear that a lot of other women don't have that safety and how it holds them back, especially at work, right? That's the thing we dive into the most here in this space.
Yeah, and I was thinking it's not just about work. One of the things that I shared was that there aren't a lot of places where I feel I can be completely safe. And so we think about, are we safe on social media? And we talked about that in our LinkedIn conversations. Am I safe with my girlfriends? Seems like a rhetorical question sometimes, but there are things that I can say with some friends that there is no way I could say that with other friends.
True.
And am I safe with family? Oftentimes we are not. Am I safe in my marriage? And I think that is a question. We had some earlier episodes last year where we talked to some guests. For a lot of high functioning women, marriage is not a safe place either. Safety, I think, is a big thing. And then how do we define it?
Yeah. I would say safety is an individual thing, an individual place. Maybe some women feel more safe in the workplace than maybe they do at home, or vice versa. Individual for everybody, where they feel the safest. And visibility. What exactly does that mean? What does that mean to you? It's big.
It is big in the context that I wrote about it with the goofy photo of my daughter. I meant it from the perspective of being able to show up as I am without excuses.
I like that definition.
There's no performance. I don't have to be pretending to be somebody that I'm not. I don't have to. I think we all are careful about our words. I believe that even when we are expressing ourselves, we have a responsibility for that expression. We
Mm.
don't want to say things that are going to hurt others unnecessarily. So I think there's a sense of responsibility. I am safe to share the parts of me that are authentic, and I won't be misjudged as a result of that. Can I show you the goofy side of me? Can I show you the sad side of me? Can I trust you when I start to cry? Can I trust you to hold those things about me that are sacred between us? Can I trust that if there is a misunderstanding, that you will work with me to resolve that? Those, I think, are all part of safety.
Yeah.
The times that I feel unsafe is when I share something deeply personal or I share part of myself. And then I find out that those things got shared with others. That intimacy then it has been broken. Or you have misinterpreted what I said, and rather than give me an opportunity to fix those things, you're working from that assumption. Or I share a deeply personal, hurtful experience with you, and it becomes about you rather than you trying to understand what's happening for me. Those, I think, are all aspects of safety. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. I also think having a place that you feel safe means that you're appreciated for your
Mm,
unique gifts and talents, that people seek you out for those unique and special things about you. And I would also say safety is a place where you can let your guard down.
yes.
So you said not performing, and I agree. That's very important. But also you can just be nothing, right? Do you feel like vegging out on the couch all day today because you're tired or you've had enough or you just don't want to do anything else? Is there a place where you can do that and you're not expected to always be achieving whatever that means to you or the other people that you live or work with? And then I also feel there's this little bit of safety that means you can be who you are not normally allowed to be at the other non-safe places. So let's say work, for example. I don't know that I'd get to be my full crazy, obnoxious, loud self all the time at work, right? There's a place for that at work. There's definitely pieces of myself I can express at work, but I'm definitely more safe, in my opinion, at home being that crazy, obnoxious, loud me. So I would say there has to be one place where you totally feel completely safe. Or
Mm,
I hope that you have that place where you feel totally, completely safe.
yeah, I think it's interesting because for some people, home is not a safe place. Work
I
is the
agree.
safer place. For
Yes.
other people, work not the safe place, home
Yes.
is.
Right.
And for some people, neither one feels 100% safe. There's a sense that I
Unfortunately.
have to perform at both.
Yeah.
And so, for those people, where can you find a
Mm,
safe place?
mhm.
How can you find it? I think safety begins with self first. We talked about this in other episodes, especially around stories
Yeah.
that, the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, they become loops and programs, and if those stories aren't nice, then we don't even have a safe place within ourselves, which is why I always say grace and compassion begins with the self first.
Mm,
You can't give what you don't have. Are you safe for yourself? Is often a question that I work with myself about, but I also help my clients with. What does it mean to you to be safe within yourself? Where are those voices coming from? And what is holding you back from saying the things that you want to say? But at work, how do we find the way to talk about accomplishments or even the learning? Because oftentimes we're so self-critical about the things that didn't work out the way we thought they were going to work out. We
yes.
make mistakes, and there's this expectation that we're always perfect, especially at work. So when somebody has a false story about you, or somebody has heard about the project that didn't go 100%, or maybe they've heard a story about you from somebody else and it was not really completely the truth, it was somebody else's perspective. You may not feel safe coming up and talking about your win, your visibility. How do you have that conversation, Annette, to correct that story?
Mhm. Yeah. As a coach, I would ask some questions of the person that's struggling with that in their career or in their personal life. And I would ask them things like, what's the story that you're telling yourself or the story you've heard from someone else that you're buying into? And then what's your truth? What's your real story? And then how can you communicate that story? Maybe if you said something like that to me, like, oh, Annette, I heard that project didn't go well. I would say, oh my gosh, Sandra, it really was a challenge. And let me tell you what happened, kind of like an interview story. And I use the STAR format. So situation, task, action, result slash learning. The STAR part would be, let me tell you what happened. This was the situation. This is what I was tasked with. This is the goal. This is what I actually had to do. This is what my team had to do. And then this was the result. And then if it didn't go well, you can say, and then this is what I learned from it. So now there's this whole process that we have in place to clean things up or to make sure that it goes well, or we do a check in 24 or 48 hours afterwards, because nothing is perfect. We need to fail. We have no choice but to fail. Not everything works the first time, every time. So accepting that failure, learning from it, and then learning a way to speak about it that acknowledges it, that honors that it was a failure. Thank goodness we learned that that didn't work before this other big project, right? And then saying, and I'm okay with that because now it's part of the things that I know to be true and I can move forward. That's what I would do. Would that work, you think, for most people?
I think that's beautiful. Me personally, I'm having 2 simultaneous reactions.
Uh oh.
The first reaction is, "Can I think that fast?"
Correct. Sure.
The older I get, the slower my brain works. It's like, "Oh, crap. I
Mhm.
think we need to be prepared." So who is a good person that you can rehearse these things with? Is
Yes.
there a trusted colleague? Do you have a coach?
Mhm.
When you get feedback, what do you do with that feedback to kind of work through it? Because clearly that's a story that people are carrying now that could impact how you're viewed. That is one thing that I'm thinking about in response to this question. What do I think that would work? Yes, I think that would work great. So, are you prepared for those conversations? Because for me, if I'm not prepared, that's when I start to ramble
Yeah.
or I start to excuse, which it comes to the second question that I'm having simultaneously. And that is, what is the fear underneath that story? Part of the I get defensive is, what am I making that story mean about who I am as a leader, as a coach, as a human? How does that tie to maybe other stories I have about myself?
Mm.
What is the story I have about the person in front of me and why they're questioning me about this? All of that is nervous system work that's happening at the same time that you're trying to come up with your star format response. And depending on which is bigger, the nervous system response or the, oh my gosh, do I have my story correct? You might actually be heading into a trauma response. Often when I talk about trauma and being trauma informed, there's a confusion about that. People think we're talking about really big things. We might be. We might be talking about really big things, but we
Mhm.
might also be talking about small things that have added up over the years.
Correct.
And so what's getting triggered is this older understanding of self that maybe didn't have a lot of trauma around it, but you've interpreted as I need to cover this up, or this isn't me, or this is how people misunderstand me, or this is shadow work that I need to work through. What I would say is if you notice that your nervous system is having a response,
Mhm.
that is information that's worth working through because that's the story that's getting in the way of
Mhm.
actually admitting, yeah, you know what? We all make mistakes. This was a great learning opportunity for me. And there's so much value, especially in a corporate environment, I think, that can come from simply owning the learning process.
Yes. And back to your point of working through the story with someone, I think one, you have to notice when the story is coming up. So are you being aware enough to notice? One of the little things that one of my coaches taught me to do is just to have a little notepad. You could even put a post-it on your desktop every single day. And then when you have one of those imposter thoughts or your inner critic is like on high alert that day, right? Just to do a little hash, right? Just a little line and
Oh,
track it for yourself. And then when you start to notice it, it starts to happen less because you're in your body, right? And you're noticing and you're aware of these things. So that's a good way to notice it when it comes up. And then the other thing is like you're noticing when the intrusive inner critic is on high alert, you can also notice good things. So at the end of every day, I recommend and I invite you because it's such a good practice to talk about to yourself, either write it down, record it, do a voice memo on your drive home, whatever it is, and talk about one thing good that happened that day. What did you achieve? How did you do it? And then at the end of the week, you should have 5 really good examples for your nervous system, like you're talking about, Sandra. And you should be able to say, okay, these are 5 great things that happened to me this week. And then at the end of the week, you should be able to say, which one do I want to develop a story about that I can talk to my boss about, or I can share in a meeting next week when they ask for a success? And then you get this rolling practice going where you're talking about yourself, your accomplishments more. Maybe you're bringing it up in big meetings, which will increase your visibility. And you're also increasing the visibility for your colleagues or the team of direct reports that you have. And that's how you can notice the bad things and work through them. But it's also how you can notice and pay attention to the good things so that you can talk about them and not be waiting for someone to notice how amazing you or your team is, because
Mm.
nobody's noticing, nobody's coming to save you. So how can you
You
be
mean there's not a white knight on a
there's
horse
not.
that's going to give me a kiss, and I'm going to wake up from this nightmare that I'm in, and life will
Yeah.
be great, and we're gonna live happily ever after like all the fairy tales say?
No, and actually, that's not what the fairy tales say. That's just the Disney interpretation of the fairy
Oh
tale.
my gosh, I can't tell you. Okay, I feel like we can't go here
Correct, I
because
agree.
I I used to pl if I caught my kids watching these movies, especially Snow White or Cinderella
Right.
or, which actually the remake of Cinderella was pretty awesome, but if I watched them watch these shows, I'd yell, "Get a credit rating! Get a job! Oh my god, stop being a victim!" And I was yelling at that at the princesses. "Don't wait for some man to come and save you."
Well, and isn't that exactly what we're saying?
Yes.
You are the one that has to come and save you, right? It's not gonna be your boss, your colleague, your best friend at work. It's not even gonna be your best personal friend. Those people are there to support you. They're there to help you along in whatever story and life you're building for yourself, but they cannot do it for you. No one can do it for you. So, how can you work on yourself internally enough that you can build enough confidence, build a good story about yourself so that you have something to believe in and you know that you are rock solid and that you can handle things that come up. You can be resilient in the moment. I really think that's what visibility is about, being able to stand there knowing that you've done the work and that you can handle anything that comes up by putting yourself out there front and center and saying, "Pay attention to me, I'm ready for it."
I have goosebumps. I do. In part because this is the journey I've been on as an entrepreneur,
Mm,
and that I feel the last 2 months has really brought new clarity for me on this journey. We've been talking about when we picked this idea of stories that people carry about us and that we carry about ourselves, we were picking a topic that we were both interested in.
yes.
And we thought, "Oh, this has a lot of crossover between what I do as a leadership coach and what you do as a career coach." I had no idea of how much old business this was going to bring up for me. I
Mhm.
had no idea what these last 2 months as we've walked through this conversation, all the processing that would come up. Grief around lost opportunities, grief around, things that I did in positions that I had, grief around opportunities lost because I didn't see the potential in what was happening at the time. And, frustration with self around why didn't I, stand up for this and why didn't I stand up for that? And
Mm,
areas where I looked at it and I thought, "Oh, look at me displaying leadership there." It cost me something. In one case, it cost me a job.
mm,
And can I be proud of the fact that I stood up for who I was and what my values were? Of course, right? Did I suffer as a result of that? Of course. Would I go back and change any of that? No. They were great learning opportunities.
yeah,
Did they hurt me? Of course they did.
sure.
So I'm just so appreciative of the opportunity we've had to share this journey these last 2 months, what has come up for clearing and processing and reintegration, because now I can stand here at the end of having done all of that work and say, I understand sovereignty in a new way. I understand that I have to choose myself first. I have to be comfortable and safe in myself, my beliefs, my values, what I stand for, who I am first. And then I can operate from that place. One of the challenges, I think, is that's a discovery process.
Mm.
And we don't know those things until we
Until
go
we
through
know.
something. Right. And so we have this, and I'm going to go back to the fairy tales. We have this sense that once we get through this turmoil, life is happily ever after. And the reality
Mhm.
is, no, it's constantly this process of discovery and self discovery and challenge and having conflict and trying to process what we've been through, what we're going through. There is no happily ever after. There's content in the moment, there's fulfillment ever after.
Yes. There's growth.
There's growth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, but I don't think we're ever gonna get to a point where we can rest on our laurels and say, "Wow, I don't have anything I need to worry about from now this point forward." No, it's a constant unfolding, and I think for me, the biggest aha in all of this 2 months of explorations has been, I choose me.
Mm.
Nobody else
Yes.
needs to agree with me, but I choose me. I need to be comfortable in who I am, what I'm doing, what I believe. I'm open to changing my opinions, my minds, my views,
Yeah.
but that doesn't change my need to talk from this perspective that I'm currently holding.
And is there undue pressure that women put on themselves? We talk about choosing ourselves. We talk about pouring from an empty cup or pouring from a full cup. And we talk about putting on our gas mask first or our air mask first. But can I challenge what I think the natural assumption is after that? Which is we do that to be fully present for others. And what if we do that to be fully present for ourselves? Can that be enough? And then we can decide what that means for the others that are around us, that we work with, that we live with, that we help.
Yeah,
That's really something that's been coming up for me these past couple months is, can it be enough that I choose me? And then everything else that comes after that is fine and also a choice, but others doesn't have to be the reason I choose myself first. It can just simply be me, myself, I.
Ankara talked about imagine a world or even an organization or a family where everybody's interest was wrapped around not only just being authentic in their self expression with responsibility, but also honoring the people around them. And I want to take that one step further and say, as a woman, if you were to model that, embodying what you described, I choose me and I am aware of how that impacts you. I still choose me first. I might choose to do something on your behalf because it's important and you're important, but I'm still choosing me first. Can we for a moment stop and think about the impact that would have on all of the women around us, all the girls who look to us and say, wow, that's different. That's
Mhm.
different than giving yourself away to everybody else to make everybody else comfortable,
Drinking to make everybody else
shrinking to make
comfortable.
others comfortable. Yes.
Being quiet to make everybody else comfortable.
Yeah. Not standing up for ourselves,
Yeah.
not standing up for other women, standing up for themselves.
Correct. And those are the concessions that it is so easy to make because of how young girls are socialized. And I see it changing, Sandra. The way that you raise your daughter is so inspiring. And I see that change. And I hope that mothers with daughters and sons are teaching their kids like you, like I've witnessed you teach your children. But the way you and I were socialized was different. Girls are to be seen and not heard. They're there to help and help everybody at the expense of everything else that you have have to do. And that exhausting loop is hard to get out of. And by the time you realize you've got to get out of it, you're already so caught up in it that it takes a while to untangle. And I think that's a point you and I are making before we hit the record button is something happens. We have a life event, a medical event, an accident, a work thing, and it finally comes to the surface and then we start to handle it. But I would dare say that you don't even know that it's a problem for you until you know that it's a problem for you. Until maybe there's somebody listening right now that hasn't even thought of it and doesn't know it's a problem. And maybe there's somebody that is listening like, oh yeah, I've been dealing with that for a long time and I can see it now.
I'm also very conscious because we're talking about safety. At least that's where we started this conversation about
Yes,
visibility is a function of how safe we feel.
correct.
I'm also very aware that we're talking from positions of privilege.
So privileged.
Now, I am Hispanic. I grew up in different cultures. I'm an immigrant
Mm.
twice, but I read white. When I
Mhm.
walk into a room, people don't automatically say Latina. They don't automatically say immigrant. They don't automatically say grew up in a culture that was impactful. They read white, they read privilege. And so, one of the things that I'm very conscious about as we talk about safety
Mm.
and being able to express our truth is that many of us do not have that privilege at all. Who are we as women? How are we supporting other women to stand up and express their truths, their authentic selves, even when they don't have privilege? How can we get curious about what's happening for them? How can we be a voice for others? I can't stand up and say, X and Y because people are going to look at me and say, but you don't live that reality. Whether I have or not, or whether I've lived aspects of those realities, doesn't matter. People will look at me and make those judgments. So rather than make those statements on behalf of people, how can we then give people platforms or opportunities to voice those authentic truths? How can we expose? So, one of the things that I do with my own kids is I ask them to go have conversations with people.
Mm.
When they make comments to me about, can you believe so and so did this? I challenge them and I say, well, do you think they could realistically represent that point of view? Or do you think that people might look at them and say, what do you know about that? I think there's a lot of judgment that we experience every day, all day. And one of the first places we can start is just even questioning ourselves. Is what I'm thinking about, is what I'm believing about, are my truths? Could those be privilege?
They could. They could be privileged. I think that asking that question at all shows a level of self awareness that
Mm.
I'm not sure everybody has gotten to the point of questioning, being aware of. So I think those are beautiful questions as leaders. Sandra, I think we could ask questions of people that we work with about that, like that same question you would ask your children, right? Is
Yeah.
so and so in a position
To be able to challenge those
to be
things.
challenge that assumption. I think that one visibility aspect, and I really do think it's completely related to safety now, looking back on it, is when you're in a meeting and you see somebody's ideas being stolen or trampled on, you hear somebody being interrupted a bunch of times, their point being danced all over. Is there something that you can do to say, let's go back to what Sandra was saying? Let's go back to what Annette was saying. It's a small act. And if you are comfortable, if you have enough privilege in that room to be able to do that, can you share your privilege to help somebody else be seen, feel safer? Because in that moment, I would say for that person, because I've been that person where my idea was danced all over, even with my privilege, when I had somebody that stood up for that or said, hey, can we go back to that? Or, hey, can we stop a minute because you interrupted so and so? I felt seen. I felt safer. I felt that I could be in that room the next time. It gave me confidence to say something, even though it was a small act by somebody else. It was impactful for me. And I think about if we could do that for one person at one point during the day, what a better workplace or home life we could
Oh
each
my
build from.
gosh, it'd be
Yeah.
huge.
But
And I'm thinking back to the conversation that we had at the beginning around when you're sitting in somebody's office and they bring up an experience that they've heard about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you're the person who's relaying the story, have you given thought to how safety and privilege might be playing into this situation? And if you are the person who's feeling, we talked about the fact that you're the one sitting there talking about your potential failure or a potential situation that didn't go the way you want it to be framed. There's two conversations going on. There's the how do I talk about this? And there's the nervous system conversation that what do I notice is happening inside of me? And how is this related to things that I may have experienced? One of the questions you can ask yourself is, how does privilege fit into this story around fear, around my nervous system reaction, right? Microaggressions and being in communities that are marginalized. These are ACEs, adverse childhood experiences that we carry that are now absolutely understood to have been trauma events, even if something didn't directly happen to us. Being part of those communities did impact our self awareness, our self safety, our self advocacy.
Agree.
And, it's one might say, this conversation, how is this related to career?
Do you really think people would say, "How is this related to career?"
I hope not,
I hope not
because
either.
I hope not, because one of the points that I want to say is you are not an isolated experience. You
Right.
don't show up at work without having brought everything with you. Your life, your experiences of being valued, your experiences of being devalued, your experiences as being a woman, your experiences of growing up in marginalized communities, your experiences of trauma. They're sitting in the room with you.
They come to work with you every day.
They come to work with you every single day. We cannot separate those things.
No. But I think we can use those experiences to fuel how we show up, how we show up for others. Are we the person in the meeting that says, "Can we go back to what Sandra said? Can we say, 'I'm sorry, you interrupted Annette 3 times so far in this meeting. Can she make her point?'" Can you notice when a meeting's being extremely invaluable and it could have been an email? And do you have enough power, enough influence to say, like, "Listen, this isn't as productive as it could be. Let's go ahead and call it quits here and reconvene when we're ready to talk about it." And
Can
then
you notice, as the
yeah.
leader, can you notice when somebody has just shrunk?
And can you create the safety that will hopefully let them unshrink a little bit?
As the one who called the meeting, as the
Mhm.
leader in the room, as the most senior person in the room, as the one with the most power in the room, which is not necessarily the most senior person in the
I
room.
agree with that
Can
wholeheartedly,
you
yeah.
look around and even question where are the power structures in the room? Who has privilege in this room?
Yeah.
Can you look around and look at the balance of the room, not just the people, but what they represent, what they're coming in with? What might be some of the stories that they're carrying about other teams, about themselves, about the
Yeah.
organization? Does anybody ever do that, or do we just start with the agenda?
Well, you're assuming there's an agenda. That sounds like
Oh,
a
well,
good
yes.
meeting to start with.
I have never been in a meeting that did not have an agenda.
I think there's always an agenda, but is everybody clued in on what that agenda is,
Oh, I like
Sandra?
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like that. There's the agenda on the piece of paper. Then there's the agenda underneath the surface. That
Ouch.
might have to be another topic that we talk about.
That does sound like a good one. Okay, mental note given.
But I think it goes back to safety.
It
If
does.
we know that there is a hidden agenda here, are we going to ever feel safe?
No, of course not.
Right. Are we going to feel visible? Are we going
No.
to want to be visible?
And if we know that the decisions are made in the meeting after the meeting, what's the point of the first meeting? So I'm going to bring something up and we don't have to talk about it, but I really think all of these underlying issues, feeling visible, being noticed at work, being recognized for our accomplishments, safety, they are all part of a workplace culture. And that That's the place where you have to decide, can I thrive here or am I in the wrong place? And I know we ask that question of our listeners so often, are you in the right place? But if you're not in the right place, then all of this self-reflection, all of this self-confidence work, all of the things you're doing to heal and grow won't matter because there's nothing there to support you in your transformation, in your journey. You have to look around you because I know you're working on you. I know you're working on your inner stuff, but you have to stick your head up. You can't be an ostrich. You have to stick your head up out of the sand and say, am I in the right place?
And that is choosing self.
That really is choosing self.
Yes, we don't wait to be chosen. We don't
Mm,
wait for our manager to recognize, oh, you need to be promoted. We don't wait for senior management to say, I think there might be a safety problem here. We don't
mhm,
wait for somebody to notice, oh, we don't have the same privilege as everybody else. We choose self. I might be in the wrong place. Maybe this story that people are handing me has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with I'm not what this organization needs.
mm,
And I choose to honor my truth and go find an organization, go find a culture, go find work that
mm.
values who I am and what I stand for.
I think that's a beautiful place to leave this conversation, Sandra.
Yes. I mean, I think what we really wanted to make sure that people carried away with them was what does it mean to be visible?
Yeah.
How can visibility be impacted? What might be going on under the surface of visibility? And that visibility starts with safety.
And how can you start to build that awareness in yourself of, are you safe? Are you in the right place? Are you putting yourself first?
I just keep going back to our conversation with Ankara,
Mhm.
where you were not giving feedback about why you didn't get the job that related to your competence.
Correct. No, it
And
was how I
that's
was
when
perceived.
yes, and that is exactly what we're talking about here. This has nothing to do with my abilities. It has everything to do with who I am. If today's conversation made people stop and think, what do we want them to do? I mean, let's not end it here.
Right, let's not, because these conversations don't begin and end with these podcast episodes. They're good indicators, but they're not the end. So every week, Sandra and I continue to exploring leadership and identity and growth and the hidden realities we don't always have the time to unpack fully during the show. So if you'd like to keep the conversation going or be included in our conversations, we'd love to have you join our email community at exposingthehiddenreality.com. It's where we share behind the scenes stuff, additional resources, and questions we're still exploring ourselves. And if this episode reminded you of somebody that you used to work with or used to hang out with, please share it with them. Sometimes one conversation is all it takes to help someone feel seen and explore their story a little differently.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful. And before next time, ask yourself, where am I protecting myself when what I really want is to be seen?
Great reflection, Sandra. I'll see you next week.